My name is Bill McMillan, and I'm here today to show you how we're going to make some grass tufts using static grass and the new flatbed grass box static grass machine. This is a new machine that I recently discovered and have been just having a great time making not only grass tufts but grass mats. Most of you are probably most familiar with the handheld shaker style of static grass applicator. But new to the market is the flatbed static grass applicator. Okay, so just what is static grass? Well, it consists of a man-made set of fibers selected for their particular ability to hold a static charge. And they're usually a blend of colored nylon, rayon, or polyester fibers that have been designed to realistically represent grass and weeds. So why would you choose to use the flatbed grass box machine instead of the shaker style? Well, the shaker style is terrific for covering large open areas, but it can be very messy. Shaking that static charged grass can cause a real mess of stray grass fibers and requires very careful cleanup methods. The use of a vacuum is really the only way to clean up the area, but it may also vacuum up previously laid scenic materials like your ground cover or your ballast. The flatbed grass box is unique. Instead of the grass being charged and then dropped from the shaker to the surface of your layout and going everywhere, the grass box charges the grass and it travels up to this charged base material. The static material is contained to the surface of the grass box and the receiving base that is held above the machine. With the flatbed grass box, you can easily create grass and weed tufts or long rows of grass. Another exciting application for the grass box is to make grass mats. So, let's get started. The first thing that we're certainly going to need is the static generating machine. The one that I found that I use is the War World Scenics Pro Grass Box. I found mine on Amazon, but it is also available at some hobby stores that cater to the wargaming people. It's really not too expensive. Mine was $60. You will need some static grass material. I primarily use the Woodland Scenics brand of static grass. This can be easily found at most hobby stores. The static grass is available in many shades of green and brown. The greens are varied from light to medium to dark, and the brown is referred to as straw to represent dead or dried grass. It also comes in many different lengths from 2 millimeter to 12 millimeter, which then convert to various heights in the different scales. On the back of each Woodland Scenics package is a convenient chart to show you the size conversion in scale. I'd recommend to start with a bag of each size you want to work with. You will find that they do last quite a while. To make the static grass stick to your base material, you will certainly need some glue. So I have had very good success using Eileen's Tacky Glue and Elmer's White Glue. When you use Elmer's, however, I definitely recommend that you use the white glue all, not the school glue. The formulas are different and the glue all is so much better. So go ahead and experiment with the different glues that you may have around. You will want a glue that dries clear or possibly brown. You will also want it to have a somewhat slow drying time, so don't use super glue. I have even had success using Walther's Goo. You will need supplies to make the base where you're going to grow the grass. For making grass tufts and rows, I like to use 1/4-inch foam board for the base. For making grass mats, I use 1-inch pink or blue insulation board. You are not going to need full sheets of either, however. Scraps are just fine. For the tufts, I like to use pieces that are about 3 by 6 inches, and for the mats, about 4 by 10 inches. When you start experimenting with the technique, you will determine the sizes you like to work with best. You will need materials to cover the base and allow the finished grass tufts to be easily removed. I recommend that you use parchment baking paper and tinfoil. Just run to the grocery store and pick up a small roll of each. I really don't recommend that you use your wife's supply out of the kitchen. Wax paper is a good substitute for the parchment paper. Surprisingly, I have found the best wax paper is actually free. It comes as the bag that contains your cereal in the cereal box. So, go eat up all that cereal, and now you got some material to work with. Now you've got all your supplies on hand, and now it's time to make some decisions. First of all, determine what type of base you would like to use. For example, foam core layered with wax or baking paper. Choose the glue that you like best. Experiment. Find what you like using. And finally, choose the size of your static grass. So many decisions. Now that you have all your supplies at hand, you are now ready to create some grass tufts in 5 easy steps. I'm going to just go ahead and review with you those 5 steps, and then we'll go ahead and actually do the steps to create the grass tufts. First of all, step 1, gloves on. Remember, if you forget, the machine will remind you. Step 2, make your base to receive the static grass. Take a piece of foam core, optionally cover it with a piece of aluminum foil. Now, this is optional, but the foil seems to supercharge the static charge. Secure the foil with masking tape. Next, cover it with a piece of parchment paper, securing that with masking tape. Place small globs of your chosen glue onto the surface of the parchment paper. They should look like small bubbles. Round glue globs will produce nice tufts. I like to experiment with these glue globs, making some irregular in shape and some long and straight. When you are done filling up your area on the base, hold the piece vertically on its side and look for any of the glue globs to run. If they do, just set the base down and let the glue begin to set. You do not want wet glue dripping onto the surface of the grass box. Step 3. Put your chosen static grass material onto the bed of the grass box. Sprinkle the material liberally onto the surface, sifting it with your fingers to remove any clumps. If you plan on using more than one color for your grass, like straw and green, use the straw first. I heartily recommend you do use multiple colors. The finished product looks so much better, mimicking Mother Nature. Step 4. Attach the alligator grounding clip to your base. Clip it on to the end where you are holding the base and make sure the parchment paper has been gripped. turn on the grass box machine. Hold your pre-glued base material horizontally over the grass box's top with a gap of 3/4 to 1 inch. Watching the static charged grass jump from the machine to the base material. Move the base in an up and down motion to pick up the grass. Try to only use up and down motion, not swiping side to side. Continue to do this until your grass tufts are thick and bushy as you may like. Finally, step 5. When you are happy with what you have just created, turn off the machine and hang your new grass tufts upside down on the edge of the table or counter to dry. Okay everyone, let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we're going to do is prepare a base. Now, what I've done here is I've cut up some pieces of foam core. I had a lot of this laying around. I use this for building buildings and things like that, but mostly these are just scraps. I like to work with a piece about this size. You could use something bigger, you can even use something smaller, but make sure that it's something that's manageable for you. I don't recommend trying to do 8.5 by 11 or 12 by 12 pieces. That's just too big for the types of things that we're trying to do here. So once we have our base, we can go ahead and we can add the actual material that the static grass is going to be clinging to. This is where we're going to put the glue. So we're going to cover these foam core sheets with parchment paper. I found this to be just excellent. It allows you to very easily remove the grass tufts once they've been created. If you don't happen to have parchment paper available, wax paper does work, although some glues have a tendency to stick a little bit more to the wax paper. But with a X-Acto knife or something like that, you can pretty much just pop the finished grass tuft off of that. Or if you like, and you're one of those kind of people actually like me that like to reuse materials, the absolute fantastic wax paper that you can get is this. Now this is cereal box liner. This is the paper, the bag that your cereal comes in. This stuff is fantastic. So if you have some cereal, eat it up, and just shake out the bag and go ahead and cut this up and use it. Now all we need to do is just take your piece, take a piece of your parchment paper, fold it around, and then I just attach with some tape. And this piece is a little bit long, so I'm going to trim it. And you don't have to be super tight on putting this together, but it does help if it's fairly tight. So I'm just going to put a piece of tape on there so it stays on the piece. That's all we need to do. So you can go ahead and make up 2 or 3, or just one at a time. Occasionally you might find that maybe it's a very humid day. For some reason you're not getting a lot of static action out of your static machine. Well, I learned a trick, and that trick is add tin foil to your base. This has a tendency to better hold the static electric charge. So here you can see I've just very simply taken one of my foam cores, wrapped it with some aluminum foil. Then all I need to do, of course, is just go ahead, get my parchment paper, and we can add that right over top of the tinfoil material. And now what we have is a supercharged base. Give it a try. You might like it. I'll show you what it looks like in just a little bit when we're applying the static grass. Now that we've prepped our bases with our parchment paper covers, we need to go ahead and place the glue that will become the actual base for the grass tuft. So in this case I'm using Eileen's quick dry tacky glue. You can use the regular, you can also use Elmer's. I'm beginning more and more to like this quick dry because it obviously has a faster drying time. The original tacky glue will work absolutely as well, and you don't have to wait a very long time before you actually start applying the grass. But with Elmer's, it has an initial relatively slow drying time, so you'll have to wait. And I'll show you how you can tell that you're ready to go with continuing with the grass application. So we're just going to go ahead and put some dots onto our material here. These are where the grass tufts will be. Now what you can do is you can vary these in size. They can be nice round dots like this. If you want to go ahead and make them irregular shapes, that works excellent. I like to do that a lot because, let's face it, nature isn't really that perfect. Also, you could do some lines of the static grass, and these can of course be placed in between your ties, for instance, on your track, or right tight up against the sides of building foundations. So you go ahead and experiment some, and I think you'll find out that it's pretty easy and pretty exciting to do. So you can see here I've gone ahead and put quite a few different dots and things. And what you want to do is hold it up and do it sideways, and if you see the glue has a tendency to run, then it's not quite ready. So we have a couple of extra steps to continue with. One of them, of course, is to load up the static onto our machine. So set this down. Notice the gloves. Listen, make sure you've got your gloves on. If you happen to forget, the first time that you grab your base, turn on the machine and put your hand right close to it, the machine is going to remind you to put your gloves on. Okay, I'm going to go ahead today for this example. I'm using some 2mm light green. Now 2mm is actually the smallest size that you can get, and you're going to want to use this for small tufts for your HO or N. Even in O gauge, it'll show up quite nicely. If you're not sure and you can't remember what I showed you before, on the back of each package of Woodland Scenics static grass is the chart that tells you all the different sizes of static, 2mm through 12, and what they correspond to as far as height in each of the scales, N, HO, and O. So for instance, 2 millimeter in HO scale is actually about 7 inches high in grass. Now that sounds like a lot, but when you see it, it's not going to be. And I'll show you some examples a little bit later of the grass tufts with an HO figure standing in that grass application. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some of this grass and we're going to distribute it onto the top of our static machine. Now make sure that you break up any clumps and just cover very lightly the surface of the machine. Now I started with light green. Okay, I've attached my grounding clip, got the glue on the base sheet. I'm going to go ahead now and turn on my static machine, and then using up and down motions I'm going to place the receiving base about 3/4 of an inch to an inch above the static grass, and you can see it actually standing up and reaching out and grabbing onto the glue. Sometimes you have to get fairly close, but be careful of dropping below a 1/2 inch because you don't want to get glue onto the surface, as that will ruin the static grass. You can take a look at it and you can see that I've got the grass attaching to the glued areas. Now remember, this is light green. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off my machine. Just set that aside. I'm going to remove this light green material. Just get it right off the surface here. As you can see, working with static grass can be a little bit messy, but it's okay, you can contain it in an area. And then what I'm going to do is put this back in the bag, because it has not, even though it's been charged, it doesn't hold the charge for any really great length of time. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put onto the surface of my static machine some dark green. And we'll just go ahead and make sure there are no clumps. Just kind of squeeze it between your fingers. Make sure we got enough on there to react to the static charge. There we go. And you can see what that looks like. I'm going to reattach my clip, making sure it's on the parchment paper. And then I'm going to go ahead and turn the machine back on. We'll go back at it with the surface again, your base surface. Oops, it's actually grabbing but that's okay. Just trying to keep it no more than at least a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch off the surface when you come down like that. Okay. And just give it a few hits. You can take a look at it at any time and see if it's getting to the density of grass that you want. I see there's quite a bit on there now. I'm going to go ahead and just let it pick up just a little bit more here. Okay, I think that should do it right now for that run. I'm going to go ahead, turn my machine off, and let this particular sheet dry. Now, I don't like to let them sit so the grass is up. I like to go ahead and put them off the edge of a table and let the grass dry upside down. That way the grass will continue to hang vertically. Okay, this time we're going to go ahead and use one of the aluminum foil covered base materials, and I'll show you how well this performs for us. I've added the glue, as you can see. Now I'm going to use some 2mm medium grass followed by the dark. So I'll load up our machine with some medium. Okay. Go ahead, put my grounding wire onto my base, turn on my machine, and let's take a look at how this works. You hear that? That's the aluminum foil shorting out against the surface of the machine because I got just a little bit too close. Doesn't hurt anything really. But remember, if you don't have gloves on, that's the kind of stuff that's going to wake you up when you come too close to the machine. And you can see what I've got so far. It also shows me I need to get towards the back of my base here. Just go ahead and get that down on there. Let it pick up the material. Okay, that looks nice. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it off and we're going to change grass again. We're going to put the dark green on. Okay, we're loaded up with some dark green. Let's go ahead, turn the machine on, and add that to our base. You can see that grass stand right up and grab hold of those glued areas for you. Just go ahead, let it come off, take a look at it. Yeah, that's filling out pretty nicely, as you can see. I think that's just about got it for this guy. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay, we'll turn our machine off. And we'll take this over and let it dry. This time, I'm going to up the ante a little bit. I'm going to start off with some 7mm straw. Now, this does show as a conversion of up to 2 feet in height, but I want to make some of these grass tufts so they are much, much higher and larger and wilder growing. It's sometimes better in your scenery overall if you do exaggerate a little bit. People then have a tendency to think that it is more believable. So let's go ahead and turn this on, and I'm going to go ahead. Now you can see that the larger or longer static grass does seem to react much more favorably as far as standing up than the smaller. And you're going to find this when you move up to the 4mm, the 7mm, and even the 12mm. You can see right away I've got quite a bit. So I'm just going to go ahead turn this off. We're going to change grass now to a dark green. Okay. Alright, I've added some longer, this is between 4 and 5 millimeter actually, dark green from Knock. It's good stuff, but it has a tendency to clump up more often than the Woodland Scenics. So we'll turn this on, and we'll go ahead and add this. It does have very nice static properties. Go ahead and get this onto our Tufts. You can see what this is starting to look like. Pretty nice. Does a really nice job, especially mixing the colors. Sometimes the color mix is very subtle, but it does add to the realism. I'll just give this another couple of bounces here. I think that's just about got it where I want it. Oh, there's one that's standing up very, very high. I don't know where that guy came from, but that's perfect. With an HO scale guy. And this is some of the other 2 millimeter. You see how nice that looks. Here he is again with some 4 millimeter. And like I was saying, the stick comes off very easily from your parchment paper. Holds together nicely. Stuff that on alongside a building foundation. We can also use the Flatbed Grass Box Pro to make grass mats. So, making static grass mats instead of the grass tufts is very much the same. The main difference is the base you will use to hold the finished grass. You will use the pink or blue insulation foam board, some aluminum foil, parchment paper or wax paper, and the wedding veil tool material. So, let's take a look at how we can accomplish this. Now we're going to go ahead and do a grass mat. The base that I'm going to be using for the grass mat is some 3/4 inch, 1 inch pink foam. If you got any blue foam, that works great too. But you want something with a little bit of substance and a side rail, and I'll show you why. We also need push pins, tin foil, parchment paper, and bridal veil tool. And if you're a modeler that does a lot of scratch building, remember that this bridal veil tool also makes excellent chain link fencing, and that's why I went ahead and bought 2 or 3 yards. Get a Joann Fabrics or any place like that. Double check. Take your scale rule with you, because the actual veil patterns will vary. Everything from octagons to hexagons to diamonds, and that's what we're looking for, diamonds a little bit closer together. And like I said, makes really good chain link fencing, but we're going to use it as the base for our grass mat. So the first thing we do is we put the tin foil onto the foam. Just go ahead, bend over your edges, smooth it out a little bit. After that comes the parchment paper. put the parchment paper on and those edges over. And finally, the tool, the fabric on top of this. Then, to secure all of this together, very simply, we just use push pins in the side. And that's why we're using the foam primarily, so that we have some place to put the push pins into. It works out very nicely, very easily. Don't be afraid to use 3 or 4 push pins. Want to make sure that it's secure. And now you can see, and I've done another one here too, we're ready to go. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and glue up the surface and use our static grass Pro Box. I'm going to go ahead and use some Elmer's glue. Just the white glue because it dries clear, full strength. We're going to cover the area on our base material here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these cheap little 1-inch brushes that you can pick up at any hardware store for next to nothing. Spread this glue out. You don't have to worry about getting it to the edges or anything like that, because you can trim the grass area with scissors or an X-Acto blade. Make sure we got plenty of glue on our surface here. Doesn't take too long. Now, because we're spreading this out, we won't have to really wait for the glue to start to doing its setup or anything like that. We can just go ahead, grab our ProGrass machine. Now I've loaded it up with some nice medium to dark grass. Let's see, some of that 4 to 5 millimeter knock grass. I'm going to put on our ground clip, turn on our machine, and we'll go ahead and start applying the grass in an up and down motion, making sure that I'm covering all the different area up to the edges, trying to maintain 3/4 of an inch to an inch. You can see how well this is starting to come out. It's looking pretty good. Oops. That's the tin foil shorting out. No problem. We'll try and saturate the area with the static grass. And that looks pretty nice, you can see. I'll just continue to pick up more and more every time we hit this. I've just about depleted the amount of grass on the surface of the machine. And you can see what we've got here. Now, I'm going to turn this off. And I think that's just about it for that particular grass sheet, as you can see. For this next piece, I'm going to go ahead and start with some straw colored Woodland Scenics to give my grass more of a dead grass base. So I'll put my grounding cable on, turn the machine, and we'll start putting this onto the entire surface of our new grass mat. You can see how nicely it stands up, and you can see, because of the lighter grass, it's a little bit more difficult to see from the white, but it's getting a nice coverage here. So we'll just continue to put just a little bit more on, not much. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead, turn this off, and I'm going to change grass to the nice dark green. Now we'll go ahead, after I've reloaded the grass onto the machine, let's turn around and plant some green grass. Here we'll just try and make sure that we cover the entire area. It's coming up real nice, as you can see. Now you can see how nicely this is starting to look. Just go ahead and plant a little bit more. Okay, I think we've just about depleted our load of nice green grass off the surface of the machine. And you can see how nicely this is turned out. Okay, I think that's really about it for this go around. See if I can pick up that last little bit. Okay, looks good. Let's turn her off. We'll set this grass mat off the edge of the table so it'll dry in a vertical position like this. Okay. Here's one more thing that you can give a try. Some of us are concerned that with this dead white background of the tool, it's not going to look very good when you place it down. Usually what I do when I put my grass mask or even the grass tufts down onto the layout, it's into wet ground goop, which I use in my scenery material. And the brown that I use, the latex brown paint, will absorb into all of the white areas and cover that. But if you happen to be going over an area where it's not wetted down with any kind of a brown latex or anything like that, what we can do is, when we put our glue in onto the surface of our base, like this, I'm going to add to that some acrylic paint, acrylic craft paint. So this one happens to be antique green, which is a real grimy, dull green color. So I'm going to add some of this, which will also help as an adhesive. I'll take my brush, spread this out, and you can see right away that what I'm working with now is not a pure white background, but one that's been already colored. Now, of course, what you can do is you can use various colors of brown, or even black, or gray, or red if you're in a clay type area. Remember that if you've ever been down to Georgia, you know that they have red dirt. So I'm just going to spread that out. Now that's all ready. We'll go ahead, we'll load up our machine, put our ground wire on, and we'll continue. Then we'll go ahead and turn our machine on. And we'll start applying. What I'm putting on there is some medium to light green 4mm. You see that picking up. Of course, it's harder to see because of the green background, but it's picking up nicely. It's just about enough of that. It's picked up in different areas. We'll turn that off, and we'll go ahead and we'll change colors. Okay, let's turn around and plant some more grass. Now this is the dark green. Stuff is going on very nicely. You can see that coverage is really quite nice. See the thickness, the density. I'm just trying to get some onto the end of the mat here, close to the. And we've just about completed this by gathering all of the available grass from the surface of the machine. Looks quite nice, actually. Okay, let's turn her off and set this one out to dry. See how nice, thick. So that's it. I want to thank you for watching, and I really do hope that you go ahead and try this technique for applying static grass tufts and static grass mats to your layout. I want you to visit my YouTube channel for more railroad clinics and railroad videos. You can see the link. It's www.youtube.com/@Dr. Bill's Productions, or just search for Macmillan Static Grass. Enjoyed having you, and I hope you enjoyed watching this. Thank you.